Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Return Missionary Next Chapters podcast. I am your host, Sid Bassett. Have you ever had a prompting from God you're trying hard to ignore? Today we sit down with Ellie Johnson, the host of the Guide podcast, to talk about what happens when you finally stop running and start listening. From growing up as one of 5 daughters in Texas to serving in the Hawaii Laie Mission, Ellie opens up about walking away from a 1 million download podcast to focus fully on becoming a disciple of Jesus Christ. And the secret prompting is a teen that changed her life path forever. And now to navigate that quiet, heavy post-mission transition when you're waiting for the green light to appear. If you're trying to figure out what comes next in your faith, your future, or an ordinary Tuesday, this conversation will inspire you and your next chapters. Ellie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. When I was on my mission and we ever had an interview and we just got a chat, I never wanted it to end. I just love talking. So I'm grateful we get this chance now.
It's really great to have a missionary on the show. We don't have it very often. And for me, I just feel like a proud father. I've met your parents and I see the joy that you've brought into their lives. And I'm sure all of your other sisters, you're one of 5, I think, but there's just a little bit extra twinkle that I see, and especially in Dad's eyes. And I feel that same for you. I'm so proud of you and all that you've accomplished. And in the prelude, we talked about your podcast, and we'll get into that a little bit. But, that's just one of many, many things that you're going to be successful at, I'm certain. Okay, let's start off. You're a Texas gal, and I love that. Growing up in Texas myself, how would you describe that upbringing in South Lake?
I feel like I always kind of knew, but then going on my mission, it was heightened, my appreciation for my upbringing. I think I am who I am because of my parents. And my dad is a man of many quotes, just like you. And I felt kind of comforted whenever you would share this one on the mission, because it would just remind me of my dad when you'd say the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And that was written like every morning when I'd leave to school, I'd walk down the stairs by our back door, and we have a big whiteboard that had like 10 quotes written on with an expo marker. And that was the first one. The main thing is keep the main thing the main thing. And my parents did that. They tried to keep the main thing, our family and the Savior and his church. And so I think, that upbringing has made me who I am. And I'm just really grateful.
Well, when I finally met them, we were actually on our mission still in Hawaii, and I've heard so much about them. I didn't feel like they were a competition, right? I mean, because they had hands down the corner of the market there. But I did feel a little bit like, oh my gosh, do you love this girl like I love this girl? And just to see your father talk about you, one of the things I had to say to your parents was, Sister Johnson is one of the most grounded individuals I know. For all that you've been given, for all that you've done in your life, there's not many people as grounded to Mother Earth as you are. And because of that, it's been really an honor to get to know you, because you and your relationships with others, not just the clothes they wore, it seemed like whatever you had on the next month, you gifted to your companions, but it was just the smile that you offered to them seemed to translate into smiles on their face as well. So, okay, growing up in Texas, it's awesome. I know as I grew up in Texas, I felt like I was the face of the church for so many people. It just didn't have a lot of members of the church. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, I remember, though, thankfully, my older sister told me, she said, Ellie, your friends here and the people at your school are going to go to all these SEC schools across the South or across the country, and people are going to talk about the Mormons, and they might be bad-mouthing us, saying lies that aren't true, or maybe an experience that they had with a member of the church, and they're going to defend you, even though you aren't in that room. And that really stuck with me. And so all through high school, I just thought, okay, I hope to make a good impression on these people, because for the rest of their life, who knows how many members of the church don't meet. I feel like there's a lot of us, but you never know. And I want people to have a good impression on the church and stick up for the Mormons because of the relationship we had in high school. So I feel like I was hyper aware of how I came across and how I treated people, because, I knew that I was a disciple of Christ, but yeah, I think I felt a little bit defensive. I love my Savior, and I love his church. And people would say things occasionally, you know, in the Bible Belt, but for the most part, people were really Christian back to me and really kind. But I just maybe always had a little, I don't know, not chip, but yeah, a little feeling just like I need to represent as well so that, you know, they'll remember that wherever they go in their life.
Yeah. And no doubt they do, because especially if you stay in Texas, there are obviously the church is very sizable and growing every year, but some of those high schools, you may have gone to a private school, but some of the public schools right now are 1,500 per class almost. So, you know, multiply that times 4, that's insanely large.
I love Texas though. It's the best.
As do I.
I found so much comfort that you and Sister Bass were from Texas. When
Well,
I was like, yes, Texas.
and it was really nice for me too. I felt very comforted knowing that somebody understood what barbecue and Mexican food from Texas was. So that's
Yeah.
great. All right. Let me talk about the serving a mission thing. Was a mission always in the cards for you?
It's funny you ask. No, I did not want to serve a mission. And I'm so embarrassed to admit this, but I was 15. I remember this vividly. And I was talking to my friends and we were talking about missions. They were members. And I said, I'm not going on a mission. I said, I'm not even going to pray to God about it, because if God tells me you need to serve a mission, I'm just going to pretend that I didn't hear him say that. So I'm not going. That's what I said, like word for word. Well, just a couple hours later, a prompting came into my mind very distinctly. And it came with a lot of peace. It wasn't mean or kind of like, come on. It was just, Ellie, after all Christ has sacrificed for you, can you not sacrifice 18 months for him? And I knew in that moment that wasn't a thought of my own. I had just said, if I prayed and God told me to go, I want to go. Like I knew that that was not my thought. It was very clear. And I don't think I'd ever really had a prompting quite like that before in my life. And the next day, a day goes by and I'm kind of trying to push it to the back of my mind because, like I said, I wasn't going to go. And I walk into a church. We're in Mexico. And I don't speak Spanish, and it was a random church. But the second I stepped in, I was so overwhelmed with the Spirit and I just started crying. And the whole time I'm just like, gosh, this means I have to go on a mission. I'm getting a little scared. But then the closing hymn was called to serve. And I knew in that moment I had to go.
That call to serve is a brutal hymn for missionaries because it does really want you to get up and go. I love that you had that strong prompting. Frankly, I love that you had that relationship with the Spirit. Had anybody in your family served of your siblings?
At that point, no one had served besides my dad. And then my sister right above me ended up serving like a year later. And so I was grateful for her example. And I'm so grateful I did it. But yeah, I was 15. And so I had that prompting. But with time, I think I tried to forget it. And I tried to say, that didn't happen. I didn't hear that. God doesn't need me to serve. And especially, yeah, then with my podcast and things that happened and as I just got older, I'm like, I have my life. I don't want to go. But then I would pull out my phone because I had written, that day in the church while I was just feeling the Spirit, I wrote it all down on my phone in my notes app. And so every time I started to doubt it for the next 4 years up until I left, I would pull out my phone and I would see, whatever date it was, the summer 2019. I'm like, okay, I can't doubt it. I wrote it down, what I was feeling. So
Writing down those promptings, those feelings, it is so very important because our mind is such that it can forget these things. But that was a personal revelation. You documented, you took time to remember it, and it never left you. I think that's fantastic. You started this podcast. How old were you when you started it?
I had just turned 18. I was a senior in high school. I knew nothing.
It's just phenomenal. And you've had over 1 million downloads. So I guess, was it that prompting that just sort of said, notwithstanding? Because I remember when we first met, I remember it vividly. We were sitting there chatting face to face. And one of the questions you had, President, I had this podcast and it's a really big deal. You didn't say that, but I now know it was a really big deal. And you're like, could I continue that podcast while I'm serving? And with every part of my being, I want everything from my missionaries, especially my sister missionaries. If they ask me something, I want to, but it just wasn't right. I knew it wasn't right. And I just had to break the news to you. And you took it like a champ. What were you thinking during that time?
Yeah. So I struggled with going on a mission once I had started that podcast. And I started it, yeah, honestly, because of prompting from God. And I was like, me, a podcast? I know nothing. I felt like just a child and kind of embarrassed. Like people are going to be like, what does this girl know? Why did she create a podcast? I could just picture everyone talking about me behind their backs or behind my back. But ultimately, was like, I'm just going to do it. And I did. And then, but I knew from a year from then, I would be going on a mission. And so I'm like, this will be kind of a short stint, but I'll just do it. And within that year, yeah, I had 1 million downloads. It had reached practically every country in the world. And I just was able to message with girls every single day on social media of them telling me that I've helped them in some way or another. And so I'm getting told, like, I'm helping them. And I'm like, wait, I can't go on a mission. Like, I can't stop helping all of these girls. And so that was hard for me. But there was a line in my Practical Blessing that talks about my desire to help people. And it very clearly came to my mind when I started to have this doubt about going again. So I'm like, God, I'm helping people. I can't go. And then this line that I hadn't ever really noticed before just comes into my mind saying, Ellie, it's a noble desire to help people, but know that the most important thing is to bring people to Christ. And I talked about Christ on my podcast, but, I mostly talked about other things. And I knew in that moment I needed to go invite others to come to Christ, the missionary purpose. So I left, and yeah, I think it made it easier to leave hoping, well, who knows? Like maybe I can do a podcast episode every once in a while on my mission, but it was good to just, leave it behind for a time and drop my nets and just focus on being present, I think is what I needed on my mission. So
Hmm.
it's meant to be. It all worked out as it should.
Just out of curiosity, when you started coming out more, talking about your mission, how did that affect your listeners? I mean, did you have people throw hate your way, or did you just get a lot of support, or what was the reaction of your listeners all around the world?
I very clearly called myself a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints quite often. And I have not gotten one hate message ever that I've seen. Maybe there's some more on Spotify. I don't really read through those ones as much, but yeah, I never got a hate message about it. And that's actually I don't know. I don't think I've actually fully thought about that I haven't received a hate message being a member of the church. People were really supportive. They've reached out to me to this day. Wait, tell me more about your church. I've connected people with the missionaries. It's been a great experience, and I've built a great community of people who just want to learn more about Jesus Christ, and other fellow Christians or that are Muslim or Jewish who just love that I have a belief in God. So people
Yeah.
actually took it pretty well. I think maybe some of them were like, what? You're going on a mission to Hawaii? So is it vacation? Like, I think that was a little confusing, but all right there.
Yeah, the whole "it's not a real mission" is something that you and I have heard a lot of over the years, and any of our listeners who are former missionaries in Hawaii will have also have heard that. It's interesting you say that, because one of the things I noticed about you early on, Sister Johnson, was that you really did relate with everybody. It didn't matter if they were a member of the church, and you didn't really grow up in the bubble that we hear about often about, everyone in your school are members of the church. Have you ever seen the little flag ceremony where everyone shows their missions afterwards, and there's like seemingly endless supply of people? You didn't have that on your mission. And so your friend group had to be outside of the circles of the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so you learned how to find that common ground with people over the years, so much so that you didn't receive any hate. I think that's phenomenal, because we do hear from a lot of podcasters when they mix their personal life with their podcast life, that they will lose a lot of followers, or look, I don't want God in my face. I only followed you because I like your messages, I like your voice, I like whatever you offer, your wisdom, but I don't need you to give me God the way you want me to. And that you never received any hate outside that which I just think it says a lot about you. It really does, because you've obviously been very authentic in your relationships and the way you present yourself, such that it didn't scare away a lot of people. And now as I listen to that, it just really impresses me more about the way you build relationships. And it's not just because if you believe as I do, then I accept you, but rather because of Christ, I accept you. Now let's get to know each other's story.
I love that. Thank you. That's really nice. I think, yeah, growing up outside of the bubble and then really on my mission of just meeting people from so many different walks of life. I mean, that's what's so unique about a visitor center in Hawaii, where people are visiting from all over the world. I got to get to know so many different cultures and really briefly and little, moments and little tours. But very clearly, I started to realize, God is so much bigger than we give him credit for. And I think sometimes growing up in a religion, you think, okay, yeah, God's speaking to me and the members of this faith. And we forget, no, God is speaking to his children everywhere. He isn't just going to say, I'm only going to speak to these members of the Church of Christ Latter-day Saints. No, he is trying to speak to everyone in a way that he can and a way that they can receive wherever they live or are. And so God is bigger than we give him credit for. And I think I try to, have that mindset on my podcast and on my mission as well.
Yeah. Well, obviously, it showed up in the fact that you can be completely authentic. All right. You did not want to serve a mission. You did not want to pray about serving a mission, but the answer came to you notwithstanding. And you opened your mission call. I don't know, were you surrounded by family or friends or maybe just yourself? What was your reaction to be called to the Hawaii Laie Mission to serve primarily in a visitor center?
Well, this is what's remarkable. And I love telling people this. Yeah, I didn't want to serve a mission, but I said, okay, God, I'll go. Fine. I'll go. But can you please send me to a visitor center? And so when I opened my call, I got the text. I was going to open it with people, but then I get a text to say, oh, your mission call is ready to be opened. I could not wait. I said a prayer right then and there. I open it. I couldn't believe it. Like, I just started bawling my eyes out because I know a lot of people are like, you want to go to a dream mission, you're going to get called to the opposite type of place. Like, don't have a dream where you want to go. But I think it was a really big tender mercy from God, where Heavenly Father was so merciful in saying, you know what? Thank you for going, even though you don't want to go. I'll send you where you want to go. And so I think then it was also smart of him because I couldn't ever complain because I was in the mission I wanted to be in and I'd wanted to be there. So I couldn't complain. Oh my gosh, God, there's lizards pooping in my bed. And I don't know, anything I wanted to complain about it. I couldn't complain because I wanted to be here. So I was so grateful. I was ecstatic. And everyone was like, what? You actually got called where you wanted to go? I'm like, yes, God is so good. He's so great. So I loved it.
I love that you wanted to serve in a visitor center. Now, that said, I do need to ask a question with the lizards pooping and other things that you endured. Was the mission easy? Was it a cakewalk that some people like to think for missions in Hawaii?
No. And I think because I got called to a visitor center, which is what I wanted, and then everyone's like, Hawaii, that's not a mission, that's a vacation. And I'm like, great, like, bring it on. I was so excited. Every time someone said that, I wasn't offended. I'm like, yeah. And then I got there, and I remember the day I got there, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is terrible. This is the worst decision of my life. I think, honestly, just the other day, someone was saying, what was the worst day of your life? And I thought of the first day of my mission. I was just not in a great spot. So yeah, it wasn't easy. There were lots of moments where I just thought, oh, I can't do this. And what though I quickly learned is it was my third transfer, President Bassett, and I just got news that you were transferring me to a new area, and I had only ever knocked on BYU Hawaii dorm doors. And now I'm getting transferred to Kahuku, the neighboring town, and I'm going to have to knock on real doors, which I've never done before. And I'm training and I'm leading a group of missionaries. And I was feeling so scared. I just was like, I can't do this. And I remember saying that phrase, I can't do this. I can't do this over and over again. When finally, very clearly, God said, Ellie, stop saying I can't and start saying God can. And it kind of just hit me. And I realized that, I needed to rely on the enabling power of the atonement. And in, Alma 26:12, Ammon, he's saying, "Yea, I know I am nothing. As my strength I am weak. Therefore I'll not boast of myself, but I'll boast of my God, for in his strength I can do all things." And so my mission was hard, and I think more so in the beginning. But once I realized it doesn't matter what I can or can't do, because I'm nothing, I'm weak, just like Ammon said. But what matters is what God can do and what I can do through his strength, because that promise is everywhere in the scriptures that we can do all things through him and through his power.
That's very profound. It is interesting because when people think about Hawaii, obviously they think about the beaches, they think about the sunsets, they think about all these great things. And of course they do have those things, but as it turns out, you can't go into a beach, you can't swim, you can't even walk on coastal sand. I mean, it's prohibited. And then on top of all that, the sunsets are usually after you're in bed, which you have curfew. So you got to time, so all these great things about Hawaii, you miss out. But what I did hear you say is that you absolutely found yourself in Hawaii, and it was a transformative experience.
I think you and I both have a love for Neil A. Maxwell, and I hadn't really discovered him or listened to any of his talks until my mission, and you would share them quite often about being swallowed up in the will of the Father. And it kind of blew my mind. I think you must have shared one and maybe like my second zone conference or something. And I realized, oh my gosh, I've been out here this whole time thinking, wow, look at me, pat on the back. I'm so amazing. I've given up my family. I've given up my podcast and BYU and just like all the fun I was having in my life. And I've given it up because where much is given, much is required. So I knew, okay, I should give it up. And I'm about to bless, other people are going to be blessed for this, but I'm not even going to get blessed because I'm giving up so much. And then as I'm reading, King Benjamin's sermons and Mosiah and about what Neil A. Maxwell says about, the only unique thing we can offer God is our will. Everything else was first given to us by God. Everything that I thought I was giving up was given to me by God. My family, my podcast, my life. So of course I have to give it up for a time back to him. And what do we know? He then just immediately blesses back. So I'm forever going to be in his debt. But once I realized that, my mindset shifted and I was like, no, I need to be out here because he has given me all of that. And the least I can do, is be out here and give my will for 18 months. And he's just going to immediately bless me anyways. And I think I've maybe shared this, but my wheels were turning as I'm listening to or hearing these talks by Elder Maxwell that I realized, oh my gosh, this is like the dad tax when maybe you're like this with your kids. Growing up, if I was ever in the car with my dad to this day, honestly, we'll go to the gas station, like on a road trip, and I'll buy whatever candy or treat I want. And then as soon as we get in the car, he's sitting in the front seat, I'm sitting in the back seat, and he hears the wrapper open. He like puts his hand behind me, waiting for me to give him some of my treat. And I'll be like, Dad, like, this is mine. You should have gone your own. He's like, would you have that if it weren't for me? And I'm like, I guess I want it. You paid for it. So sure. So I give him some. And I was just like, that is how it is with God. And then he actually just blesses us more. So he gives us more back. But it's just the dad tax. And he then blesses us in return. So I think, like the Gospels say, when you lose your life for his sake, you're going to find it. And a mission just sets you up perfectly to do that, to lose your life, to drop your nets and just go find it. So I could not be more grateful. As much as my little sister wants to go on a mission in like a year when she's old enough. And I'm just like, I want her to go so badly because I am who I am now because of my mission. I'm a little scared and sad because I'm going to miss her. But I know that it will change her life because my mission changed mine. I found myself.
When you taste something that good, you think of Father Lehi, and you just can't help but turn around and say, go for it. You can do it. I'll be here to support you. We'll all be here to support you. Although knowing it's going to be really hard for them too. And they're going to have that first day like you did, where you're just like, oh, this is the worst. What am I doing? Because they've got to work themselves through that one. And when people talk about tithing, I didn't think about this dad tax concept. And if you see it that way, which is the way it is, It's not really in a question mark. Nobody thinks I don't want to pay tithing. They just know that they want to because this is a way to give back in some very, very small way. And like you said, as you've heard from great, profound people, you're never caught up. King Benjamin was right. You're always going to be indebted. And so just continue to give back because you'll always be on the right side of the ledger with our Heavenly Father. Normally we don't spend a lot of time on missions. We talk about the post-chapter mission, but I just feel compelled to keep asking you just a few more questions about your mission. So you talked about meeting people from all over the world. Did you ever meet somebody come through the visitor center that knew you from your podcast?
Yes. I think there were a couple of times where like, oh, like, I don't know. It's hard because people never saw my face. So when people do recognize me from my podcast, it's literally just for my voice, which it happened more often when I was at BYU. But yeah, there was one time on my mission and they were from the States. And so they had heard it. And yeah, they were a member of the church. But yeah, it was a cool opportunity. Like, oh, just reaches people. It always made my day whenever I run into someone who's listened to it.
Now, when we talk about our mission experience and our love for our mission, obviously, we talk about converting ourselves first to the Savior Jesus Christ. And if there's ever one convert, it's going to be oneself. Obviously, we want to invite all to come into Christ, and it's important that we focus our attentions on bringing people closer to Christ. But ourself, our number one person, is the one that we need to focus the most on. Our companions are kind of next. And one of the things I knew about Sister Johnson was that her companions loved her. And it wasn't just because they wore your dresses. It wasn't just because you were so giving and gracious. It's because you gave of yourself in a very individual, powerful way to people. And even though maybe you felt like you gave up much, you seemed to give back so much. Were you always that way? Or is that something you learned?
Well, don't ask my sisters because clothes a lot. We did not want to share clothes. So I just think that's funny that you asked that. But yeah, I think my mission was really crucial for me and opened my eyes a lot to what I had been given. And I just fell in love with people. I've always loved people and I've always loved connecting with people. And I think that's why I created my podcast. But I also had some insecurities. And I think when you're insecure, that can get in the way of you really connecting with someone and really giving to someone and loving someone because you're just spending a lot of your brain power thinking about your insecurities. And I think my mission, I really just let a lot of those insecurities go because I realized, yeah, it doesn't matter what I can or can't do. It matters what God can do. And I'm here for him. And so I think this newfound confidence that I gained on my mission made me just love people even more because I didn't have to focus on myself anymore. Like I sometimes felt just as a teenage girl, I'd focus on myself and what I lacked. But then on my mission, I just got to focus on how amazing God is. And the least I could do was then just try and help other sisters, just feel that love that they had from their heavenly parents. And I was not a perfect companion. I still feel so guilty. Shout out to Sister Rami because she always wanted to go on a hike and I never went on a hike with my parents for we were companions. I'm like, oh, that was so rude of me. I was not a nice companion for doing that. So I was, I think all my companions are amazing. Everyone asks like, oh, did you ever have a hard companion? Everyone asks that after the mission, right? I'm always like, no. And I'm like, maybe I was the hard companion. If I never had a hard companion, I worry about that because I just feel like I had the most amazing sisters that I served with. I just loved all of them. And I feel like they blessed me more than I blessed them.
Well, if I'm getting this right, I may have to go back and fact check this, but I seem to recall there was a mission companion or at least somebody you lived with that you really wanted to, because you knew the sacrifice it was for her and her family for her to be on her mission. And just even to pay for her mission was something that was a huge sacrifice. And we had if I recall this correctly, you'll have to guide me on this one, but we had a missionary who left and family wanted to pay for certain people's missions. That's not something we solicited, obviously, as mission leaders. And even even if they offered, we had to sort of talk to the individual because they may or may not wanted them to pay for it. But I remember there was one person we were going to pay for their mission, and you found out about it, and you were really upset because you wanted to do the same thing, but you felt like maybe you shouldn't do it. And I remember thinking, wow, I mean, she literally believed that she wanted to pay for probably all the missions that she could. And I just thought that just said a lot about your heart. Do you remember anything like that? Was I imagining that?
Yes, that's true.
That's what I thought.
And really more my parents. I mean, I need to credit them. Like, I had nothing to my name really at the time, but we all really equally loved that sister. So, yeah.
Mhm. Well, the gleam in your dad's eye that I saw, you corralled resources. You could raise capital if you need it, I suspect, by just a question. So it's really nice that you were willing to think about your companions in a way that would somehow ease their burden and to show love in any way you could, not just the physical, but the emotional as well. Oh, that was great. In your decision to serve a mission, you talked about, almost every country was impacted by the guide podcast, which I'll put in the notes here. You were served in a place where you saw people from all over the world. So did that help you? Was that one of those preparatory things that now you look back on and say, wow, I was able to reach people all over the world. And now they came to see me in this beautiful temple visitor center in Hawaii.
1,000%. I Yeah, I just am amazed by people and people's stories. And I felt like on my podcast, I got to share. I didn't even really interview people. I just would talk because I can talk and talk and talk forever.
You are a storyteller, which is great. You can tell reflective stories all day long, which I think is fantastic.
No, you're
Which
nice.
makes you a great podcaster, actually.
Thank you. So I love to talk. So I mostly just come on and tell my stories and my experiences. And then I got to go on a mission, and all of a sudden it changed where I'm just asking them questions. I'm just getting to know this person from the middle of nowhere, like from countries I did not know existed. And it really opened my eyes to, how big God is, like we were saying earlier, and just made me appreciate people so much more and everything that people go through and their paths, and that then how orchestrated it was that then my path got across with theirs. So I felt like, one of the most blessed people in the world that I got to serve in a visitor center in Hawaii and meet all these people from all over.
No. I will go back to that first day when you arrived. Obviously, that wonderful day when you arrived on your mission. And you asking me the question about whether you could keep your podcast going. And I felt badly sort of having to say essentially no. But I've watched you since, and it is as if your podcast has continued on, and it did continue on throughout your mission. I don't know. Are you still active in your podcast now?
I still do a couple episodes every once in a while. I've maybe done, I don't know, 20 since being home for my mission. So definitely a lot less. I had done one every single week leading up to my mission. I had done exactly 52 before my mission. And now I do them a lot less frequently. But when I really feel inspired or led to talk about something. But I love it. I feel like it's been more of a blessing to me, just like my mission. Both my podcast and my mission have both been more of a blessing to me than to anyone else. And I'm grateful that God put me on both of those paths.
I have listened to one of your podcasts actually about next chapters. I thought that was somewhat ironic. And it was almost an inspiration to think, oh my gosh, Ellie needs to be on this podcast. So I'm grateful you accepted the invitation and joined in. Now, as we talk about next chapters, though, they're rarely a straight line for people. And sometimes they can be difficult. In fact, that was sort of the origins of this podcast, is to get a lot of my heroes out there for people to hear their stories. What was your line like when you returned from your mission?
I feel grateful. I feel like I adjusted pretty decently at first. And I just knew, it wasn't God's plan for me to be on a mission forever. And He wants us to go home eventually. And I really firmly believed, well, God's intention was sending us on missions at 18, 19, 20, 25, whatever old we are, wasn't for us to peak spiritually at that age. He wants us to continually come closer to Him. So this isn't the closest I'm ever going to be to Him, isn't going to be my mission. And I was very, very adamant about that. And so I think going home for my mission, I had to realize, okay, want to stay close to him. How can I do that? And it's going to look different than a mission. And so I think, that wasn't a straight line and I had to figure things out. But I knew that God's plan for me was to eventually come home and to stay close to him.
I would see the post from you with your family. Of course, you did some amazing things coming home. I'd see these posts from you, and it, it was interesting because I'd see all your siblings and your family, and then there was you that sort of stood out, this glowing light out here. And it seemed like you were happy, but there were still things that you wanted to do, and you could see your mind going because you're so reflective anyway, that it felt like there was something missing that was going on when you got back. And it wasn't a sadness. It wasn't a forlorn or anything like that. It was just so there's something missing that you wanted to reach out to. Did you feel that when you got back?
Yeah, I think, your purpose on your mission is very clear. To invite others to come into Christ. And I hope my purpose is that for the rest of my life, 1,000%. But also, you go on a mission and it talks about it in Preach My Gospel. Okay, yeah, you dropped your nets. Now you're a disciple, you're following the Savior, you're a fisher of men. And now you go home from your mission and you're kind of supposed to pick those nets back up again. Now you have to figure out school and a career and dating. And so that can feel really overwhelming, I think, for return missionaries. But I think, that adjustment period of realizing, okay, I'm going to pick these nets back up again, but this is now the real test. Can I hold these nets, but be holding them for him? Can I try and, give glory to him in everything that I do? And so I think it took me a second, but I ultimately realized, maybe I'm not knocking doors or standing in the visitor center all day just with Christ's name on my chest. But when I go to class on campus, am I going to include God there? When I'm going on a walk with my friend, am I going to include God there and say, what does this friend need to hear from me today? When I'm going on a date, am I going to include God there and just have him on my mind, say prayer before, help me be in tune with the Spirit? And so I think once I figured that out, I realized God just let me be a part of his really great plan out on the mission. I got to be a part of his work. And I still get to be a part of his work here. But now that I'm holding some nets, because I have to, this is life, and he wants us to be functioning members of society, can I include him in my work here too, in school and in my relationships? And once I figured that out, life got so much better.
Well, Ellie, this has been absolutely delightful. You said that you just got to include Jesus Christ in your life and all that you do, and you found peace in that right now. Tell me how you do that. What's the formula?
I think we are a little narrow-minded sometimes, and we have been trained about the primary answers, which are crucial. Yeah, go to church, read the scriptures, pray, go to the temple. 1,000% do those things. Do them every day, every week. But we are spiritual beings. You would always say this. We're spiritual beings having a mortal experience. We're not mortal beings having a spiritual experience every once in a while. So I'm not just going to hear from God or talk to God, pick up the phone and hang it up when I pray to him or when I read the scriptures every morning or every night. No, he wants to be with me throughout the day. That is how involved of a father he is. And so once you open your minds to, wait, he's everywhere. Everything is a spiritual experience to him. Me going to school, that's a spiritual thing for me. It can be if I let it be. And so, when I'm in the car, I usually don't listen to music because that's when I really include God and I'm just like thinking about everything. When I'm walking on campus, I never really have AirPods in. I don't really even listen to podcasts or music or really anything because I'm just constantly trying to talk with God and be more open to the Spirit. And maybe that's kind of weird. And I think music and podcasts and audiobooks are great. And I, of course, listen to all of them. But I think I have a lot more silence in my life because I try and fill it more with God. And it helps me be more aware that he's in every moment of my life. So I think God has spoken to me in like the weirdest things and stoplights and golf analogies and skiing analogies and trees. And they're very profound lessons and things that I really needed to hear through something random. But I wasn't sitting in a church. I wasn't sitting in the temple. It was just while I was walking or while I was going to class, So I think just open your mind to realizing God's a lot bigger than we sometimes give him credit for. Look outside the box. He's everywhere.
Hmm. We do talk about this on the mission, and that is to believe the promise in the sacramental prayer that we can always, always have His Spirit to be with us. And if we do that and we create space for quiet time, if we unplug, if we just find ourselves just being reflective and listening, I agree with you. I think He will be with you always. And He can speak to you in ways that otherwise you wouldn't know. And you learn things. I mean, you think about Nephi building a ship. I just can't imagine he needed to build a lot of ships growing up where he did, right? There weren't a lot of needs to go out and build a ship to cross an ocean. And yet he opened up his mind to receive. And that is exactly the advice you're giving to all of us. Thank you for that. If you look back now, what advice would you give to return missionaries as they come back from their mission or trying to navigate their next chapters?
As you just said that, I felt like just a couple months ago, I was feeling really impatient. Like, okay, when is this next chapter? I feel like I'm kind of stalling. I feel like I'm running in place. Nothing is happening right now. And I felt kind of stagnant. Like I'm trying to get ahead, but you scroll Instagram and you feel like everyone's hitting these milestones or big steps. And I'm like, I'm still just trying to figure out college. And that's kind of what I've been doing for 2 years. How have I been home from my mission for 2 years? And I was kind of just having this little breakdown about it. Of like, what am I doing with my life? I'm getting nowhere, but I'm trying to. I'm not feeling too directed right now. I'm not in tune with you, God. Where is your direction? Why is nothing happening? I just felt like I kept getting stopped. And I was feeling this, when all of a sudden I kept hitting red light after red light. And I'm like, ugh, of course, I'm already in a bad mood and I keep hitting all the red lights and it's late and I just want to go to bed. But all of a sudden, I felt God tell me, Ellie, the lights always turn green. And I knew that He wasn't just talking to me about these traffic lights, that they always turn green, because they do. But He was trying to teach me the lights in your life will always turn green. It just sometimes takes time. And I think we read in the scriptures these amazing stories, right? Of the Israelites getting out of bondage and getting to the Red Sea, or about Noah building an ark, or about, Nephi and his family getting on a boat. But because they're on like a page or two, we forget how long they waited and how long that chapter was until they got to the next chapter, and that Noah was building an ark for 70 years. Probably day after day, like, what am I doing? Like, come on, what is my life? Can this water come yet? Sometimes we just have to wait. And that's okay. Every disciple ever has had to wait. And so you're going to have to wait too. And also, practically every disciple has had to take a step not really knowing. I love Elder Holland's analogy. If there's a fork in the road, sometimes you just have to go down a road until you figure out, and then you'll receive the prompting once you're already on it. And I've kind of stalled for a long time. What am I supposed to study after a mission? It took me until a whole year after a mission to figure it out. When one day I was just like, someone mentioned a major and I was like, I haven't heard about that. I go home. I just made it my major. I signed up for the introduction class for it. And then a week later, school starts, and I'm about to walk into that class. I'm like, what am I doing? I didn't even pray about this. I'm so confused. I've been trying to figure out a major and been praying about it for a year, and I haven't figured it out. And now I just signed up for this random major that I know nothing about. I walk into the class overwhelmed with the Spirit. First class I ever cried in at BYU. And it was a random class that I knew nothing about, but I knew that I needed to be there. But it wasn't until I took that step. And so disciples had to wait. They had long waiting periods that were probably really annoying, like Joseph in jail or in slavery or whatever. But they also then had to take steps not really knowing, what they had to do, notwithstanding beforehand what they should do. But if you can remember that you're going to have to do both of those things, they're going to be uncomfortable in life, but that God is still directing you. He hasn't forsaken you. Then you're going to be good. Because post-mission, there's a lot of things that you'll have to pray about and worry about and figure out. So don't freak out if you're having to wait. And if you feel like you're not getting the direction right at first, just take the step on a path.
I'm breathing easier, being more patient with some of the things I would like to have done immediately, to know that light will turn green. Ellie, you are amazing. We love you. We want to emulate all these things that you've taught us. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you. This was so just fun and uplifting to be here with you. And we were kind of talking right before we started recording about remembering. And I was just reading in Mosiah yesterday and came across a verse like, they're quick to do iniquity and slow to remember. I'm like, dang, am I slow to remember? And am I slow to remember all of the wonderful experiences I've had with, the Spirit? And so opportunities like this where, we're pushed to remember and to talk about God and all of his greatness and the blessings that we've been given makes me remember. So I'm grateful that you gave me this opportunity to do so.
Yeah. I'm going to go write it down too, like you, so that I don't forget it. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's program. It is our sincere hope that you gain insights from these lived experiences of disciples of Jesus Christ as you navigate your next chapters in life. We look forward to having you join us each week for the unfolding chapters of our guest. Remember to follow us on Instagram at RMNextChapters for announcements and updates. Also, you can visit us on our website at rmnextchapters.com, where you can listen to each podcast directly or link to your favorite podcasting platform. As always, if you have any thoughts or feedback, we'd love to hear it. Please send them to sid@rmnextchapters.com. See you soon.